out here today with my good friend Dallas, and we were talking last week. We were looking at different equipment and kind of playing around, having some fun in our training, and Dallas brought some of his fencing gear. And as we were training and we were working with different weaponry and different training tools, we kind of ended up getting into a discussion about the differences between your fencing gear and Kendo gear. And so we thought it'd be kind of fun just to take a moment and to compare a little bit of the equipment, some of the similarities and differences. Just want to, full disclosure, straight out of the gate, I have a little bit of training. I have some training in Kendo. I love it, but I do not present myself as a Kendo expert. It is not my wheelhouse. And I think Dallas, as much as he has a love for fencing and has some experience, he is not claiming to be a fencing master. So this is not a high level comparison of systems and equipment. This is just a couple of friends who like to train, have a good time, saying, hey, let's have an interesting discussion. Now, real quick, before I go any further, Ed, can you hand me that slip of paper that's right by your foot? Thank you. I did have to jot down for myself a cheat sheet because my Japanese is horrendous, and so probably what's going to happen is there's going to be someone out there watching this video later saying, So in any case, so with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And why don't we start off with swords, okay? So if we pull them out, go ahead, pull out the fencing one. All right, so in your Kendo, your primary weapon is your shina. Now the shina, what's neat about the shina is if you get a close look at it, it is constructed from strips of bamboo that's then bound together. It has its stings if you get hit with it, but it has a certain amount of bounce and certain amount of flexibility. The tip is rounded, so you're certainly on a thrust. Certainly it's going to give you an ouchie, but you're not going to be impaled. It has a long handle, typically meant to be held with both hands for the most part. When looking at the shina, you have a yellow string. The yellow string would be considered the back or the dull end of your sword. The front would be where the edge is, and you would be working it as such. Now, if we compare that to, got a creepy crawly here. Sorry about that. I'll take that. And if we compare that to the fencing sword, and this is a very rare thing, I'm going to actually try to be quiet for a little bit and let Dallas talk.
Basically, in the concepts of European fencing, there's 3 types of training swords. This is a foil meant to try to teach people to use the point, similar to a rapier, but without the rigidity, without the sword comparison. So it's basically just to train to use the point. The next sword up is the saber. So you could use the point, but then you could slash because it's basically like a saber of combat style, so it could cut either way. And then there's the ippei, which is the closest thing to a weapon of that training 3. This does not have a point under it. It's flat and has a rubber tip. And it's very, very flexible. So once again, so you don't impale. Now, the 3 vulnerable places, of course, are the eyes, the throat, and other areas of which we won't speak. But anyway, there is proper equipment used for that, because with all these are actually not weapons, but training items to prepare you properly for weapons. But in the hands of this man, these are weapons. But I will think of them as training objects.
Just remember, flattery will get you everywhere. So, and the thing is about, these are training tools, and they are in many ways replacements of weapons as for training. But at the same time, it's always important, and I can never emphasize this enough. At the same time, they're not toys. You get hit with one of these, it's going to hurt, and so let's just keep moving on. So next, why don't we go with, and we'll use, we'll start off with layman terms. Let's go with helmets. Now in the Kendo, and this is where I have to turn to my cheat sheet to make sure this is the men, not men as in gender, unless you consider this to be a manly man thing to wear. So with the men, it's not a helmet that would go straight on. It actually, or on down on your head. It actually comes forward, because if you look, the back is completely open. I'm going to get a little bit closer to the camera. The inside has a certain amount of padding for your face. And so I'll duck down low so you can see a little bit better. So when I put it straight on here, looks something like that. Now you notice it has the two flaps that go out to the side that help protect the shoulders, and a very rigid piece in the front here protecting the neck. Your face shield, which is a series of bars across, is close enough that your Shana will not penetrate it. Now, the reason why we got into the conversation last week, Dallas and I were talking about the differences in the equipment, is because the fencing sword would slip straight through that. And so we're just discussing the difference between equipment and the design for specific systems. Oh, and to keep it on, you have your straps here that actually wrap around and tie in the back of you.
This is your typical fencing helmet. It is basically a very stiff mesh to allow you to see through it. In order to put it on, it has a simple clip that holds with a little bit of pressure and tension. It does have a gorget, which is to protect your throat. Nowhere near as well as that one is made, because this is just protecting a very fine point. So by you put it on from behind, put it down, your chin wedges, you take your gorget underneath, and a fencing jacket would be a thicker material to protect from the point, but once again, it still shouldn't go through you. The mesh keeps the point from your eyes, your most vulnerable point. And it will take a certain amount of abuse, that it's not as well as padded as that. You can hit the face of that with a baseball bat and it wouldn't go through. This one would bend, but this one will stop a point where this one will not.
And it was interesting, if we hold these up, it's what the fascinating thing to me, what I thought was really interesting, is that the Kendo helmet will protect you from the Shana, but not the fencing. This is which one is this?
This is the foil.
The foil. But the foil would slip straight through. Whereas the foil will not slip through this mesh, but what we did notice is the padding is very different, that the design, and I don't know if it's just this particular one, and so please take anything that we say with a grain of salt. This is just our observation in comparing equipment. I've been hit wearing this with the Shana. I have not been hit with this with the Shana, but I would not want to be. So it certainly will offer a certain degree of protection, but not as much as this. So I just thought it was fascinating that how the Kendo helmet will protect you, or the mane will protect you from the shina, and the fencing helmet will protect you from the fencing sword, but not the opposite. Which kind of gets into, this is not about which one's superior, we're just looking at differences in design. How about gloves? Now, the gloves, and it's funny and I think we can just compare them. So real quick, the Japanese is called the Kote, K-O-T-E, and so we'll go righty. All right. So the first biggest noticeable difference between the two of these is that the Kendo gloves is like mittens or pot holders, whereas the European Dallas has actual fingers. Now, when it comes to protection, these are designed to be able to take it. Now, that hurts a little bit more up here, but on the fingers, I can really whack them and I'm fine. So if I'm sparring or dueling or fighting, and my fingers get whacked by my opponent's shina, I'm going to be okay.
Take a look at those. Sometimes I wish I had those. These are very thin because so much depends on your finger control. It also affects your speed. Also in fencing, many people are ambidextrous, so you have to have your fingers so you control your point and your positioning. They are very good with a foil. I get hit with the shina, I was like, ow!
So real quick, so you go ahead, take that. Let me take this. And so, yeah, so for me to try to have that control with the Kendo glove is very difficult. This is very, incredibly awkward. And whereas I'm sure for Dallas, he'd be able to do a lot, however, not much in the way of protection if he got whacked by a fellow Kendoist. Thank you, sir. All right, now Dallas was talking a little bit about the vest or the jacket you wear in fencing. So in your Kendo, you have your armor, your chest plate, which is called the, I really probably should have spent some, actually I should know this one, the do. Do, a deer, a female deer. But the fundamental difference between this is, as Dallas was just describing, in fencing, it's a jacket and it has a certain amount of padding. But this sucker, if I go ahead and hand Dallas the shina and just kind of pop it a little bit. Go ahead. All right, right center, dude, right there. Yeah, I mean, I feel it. I mean, don't get me wrong. But again, offers a lot of protection. Now, the way this guy works is it has the straps that tie behind, and another one that goes over the shoulder and ties into here to hold it in place. And if you look at how low it is, you have to remember that this is to be worn with this guy in your neck protection here. Kind of almost really it fits together nicely. The one other piece of equipment for your Kendo, and this is your tar, and this is where I know I'm butchering my pronunciation. but it kind of wraps around as such, and it gives you protection just in case your partner kind of goes a little bit too low with their shanah. And so it offers additional protection, but at the same time, you have a certain amount of flexibility to move. Obviously, the armor itself, in terms of the general design, it is based upon your traditional samurai armor, and it takes a while to I don't have the proper clothing, the hakama, which is the thing that looks like a skirt or a dress, and the top. But maybe in another video we'll do something on actual kendo, and I'll actually put the full gear on. And you know, I don't know, if we could figure out a safe way to do it, maybe we'll do like a fencing versus kendo. But we'll have to figure out how to do that without sending someone to the emergency room. But in any case, like I said, we just wanted to have a little bit of fun, just a conversation, kind of a compare and contrast, just looking at the equipment, not really looking at so much the science behind it. That's, you know, a lot more in depth, and maybe we'll get into that down the road. But for right now, we just wanted to have some fun, show you some of our toys, or I shouldn't say toys earlier, I said these weren't toys, but some of our training equipment. And you know, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or maybe your own insights into either of these arts, fencing or kendo. Thank you for watching. Until next time, God bless.